We live, we live. What's up, y'all? It's your boy Rick in the building, What's good, y'all? What's good for everybody who's watching right now, who's gonna watch right now, for everybody who's gonna watch later. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Y'all know I do these interviews on Wednesdays. We got a very, very, very special guest in the building tonight. We talking education. Let me bring my partner in, y'all. Let me bring my partner in. My man is in the building. Okay, my man Arturo Forrest, Executive Director, Helen Y. Davis Leadership Academy. Let's get it! Listen, we vibing like this, y'all. This how we bringing them in, y'all. Y'all got to vibe with us for a second, okay? This how I start my show, y'all. Hold on, we got an ED on here. We got to be very appropriate with the language. We're not playing around. Hold on. Very
Absolutely.
appropriate with the language, okay? But shout out to Most Definite Crew. Listen, very, very, very excited to have my brother in the building, y'all. So excited. I'm gonna talk a little bit about how I know this brother. But first, let me just do him some justice. I'm going to his LinkedIn profile, y'all. All right, to give y'all this good bio intro. Okay, let me tell you who my brother is, who this executive director is. He's an experienced administrator with a demonstrated history of working in the education management industry, skilled in nonprofit organizations, coaching, organizational development, public speaking, and curriculum development. Strong information technology professional with a Master of Arts, focus in history from Simmons College. Even though he can't hear it, make some noise for this black man, y'all. All right. So my man, so look, y'all see the first name, but this is my man Forrest. That's how I affectionately call him, okay? So don't worry, I ain't off, okay? So this is how we start every show. Y'all know we start every show with the bring me back, okay? Y'all know whoever I bring on, we ask them to bring us back. I'm going to throw a few pictures up here, and then Forrest, you got to bring us back, baby. Okay, the first one up is this one right here. That's you right there, little you right there. Talk to me about this, bro. What are we looking at? What's happening here?
Okay, I'm on the east side of Detroit, late '80s. That's my grandmother, Juanita Forrest. God bless her soul.
Word.
It's a great woman. The matriarch of my father's side of the family, and I would say a pillar, of who I am as a person. I have a huge family, and so accountability is something that I feel like I always had. Um, between my father's side of the family and my mother's, very, very deep. And all of my family, originally is from the east side of Detroit. So huge, huge family, maybe more than 40 or 50 folks on each side of my family. So accountability is important.
We're going to talk Detroit. I got another picture for you. That's powerful. We definitely going to talk Detroit. Let me show you what else I got here for you. Bring us to right here. Or bring us to right here. What's popping right here? Where are we? What's going on?
Okay. I may not be able to place the location. But, family is extremely important to me. That's my lovely wife, Erica Forrest.
Shout out Erica.
Firstborn, my oldest daughter, Madison. Looking identical to my youngest daughter, who's actually 1 now. So that's something funny. Whenever I see the pictures of them, you really can't tell them apart at that age. So
word.
That's kind of like a running joke for us. Man, I'm gonna say Baltimore. I'm gonna
say Baltimore. Okay, maybe in Baltimore. Listen, so here's the one thing that's beautiful, y'all, is Forrest is traveling. Him and the family's getting around. When we went through these pictures earlier, he was like, Rick, I don't even really know if I'm sure where we at, but it's all good. Forrest, bring me right here, bro. I love this one right here. I love black joy. Look at this right here. Bring me here, bro. What's popping right here in this picture?
The brother in the middle, that's Jerome Jenkins. He actually was the best man in my wedding.
Word.
But this is at his wedding, maybe 5 years ago in Cincinnati. And those are a few of my fraternity brothers. But that theme of accountability is important. My start on formally working in service, at least in my college years, You know, I can put so much of who I am today and directly being impacted by a lot of these brothers in the picture.
That's dope.
Responsibility. I mean, when I see that, I think of study tables. We had study tables every Friday.
No doubt.
And I was the community service chair of my chapter of my fraternity. And so that was like some of the first actually business oriented experience I had with working with students. I mean, yeah, I mean, great brothers, everybody,
I love
achievement
that.
is important. So,
I love that. I love that. I love that. Okay, just two more. Just two more. I feel like we're getting warm. We're getting warm. All right, I'm gonna bring you to this one because you look like a preacher on Sunday on this one. You look excited. You going. Tell me about this. What's going on right here at this event?
this was my first keynote at a DLA graduation.
That's dope.
I'm going to guess the year, maybe 2017, if I had to guess.
Yeah. Forrest, do you remember the topic? Or that's too far away. That's asking a lot, huh?
Oh boy, the topic might be hard to come by on that one. The topic is hard to come by, but I'm sure it was in general. You next up to do something special. If I
No
had to
doubt.
guess.
No doubt, no doubt, no doubt. And the last one for bring us back is this one. This is actually you outside of the Helen Y. Davis Leadership Academy School. What's going on right here with this picture?
So this is our first ever Miss DLA. She had a community service platform, showed her talent, great grades. She was a sixth grader at this time. And this was one of the options or offerings for our after school program. And she was a part of the Tuskegee cohort. So I had to make sure I represented her properly.
No doubt.
Some Tuskegee gear on, even though that's, not my school, but it was only right to represent her as the first winner of that prestigious award there for us at the school.
You had to hold it down. Okay. So now that's beautiful. So Forrest, now me and you, one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, because you my guy, right? I'm not, this wasn't like a random reach out. You and I met over a decade ago. At the time, it might have been 07, 08, bro. At the time, I was at the DA's office working with a weed and seed grant. I was a project coordinator for the Safe Neighborhood Initiative. And you was at the Epiphany. You were at the Epiphany School right near Sharma Station in Dorchester. And I used to come over there because my little brother was going there at the time of King.
Yeah.
And when I moved back to Boston from North Carolina, he was like, "Yo, they be balling over there." and my man and whoever Lino, boom, boom. And then I met all y'all dudes, man, and we would hoop all the time, go out, dance together, laugh together. And so to think about, when you might have been a fellow when I met you at Epiphany. Right. I think you was living in the homes right near Epiphany. So to think about the journey from then to you being an executive director of a school that services and loves our Black and brown babies in the city of Boston is an amazing, amazing feat. Before I ask you the first question that I had lined up as we was going through the catching up through the pictures, you said something and I was like, I want to know about that. You grew up in Detroit. Yeah. Tell me about growing up in Detroit and how did you get from Detroit to Boston?
Well, Detroit, I mean, it's just a special place. Hard-working people. It instills a certain amount of, go get it in you. I feel like that's just something that's important. You have to have confidence to be from Detroit. And whatever it is that you specialize in, it has to be the power of belief, and you have to have support. And so I got all of those things, from my family. It's a no nonsense area. It's just so many things I learned about, just essentially, if you're going to make it in Detroit, I feel like you can make it anywhere.
Word.
It's just something about the atmosphere and, just a truly special place. If you want to talk like sports, which is a big part of who I am, education. My grandmother actually was the office manager or the secretary at my middle school. She 50 years in education. And so I get my start from her and my aunt, who's, one of my biggest mentors, my Aunt Lucy, she actually was the principal at a school that was for teenage mothers.
Word.
So a lot of advice I get from her, guidance, this whole process. And I actually ended up in Boston through a connection through my fraternity, through some community service work I was doing. And that's how I ended up over at Epiphany. And the fellowship program is special because, I mean, it's a 7 hour, maybe 8 hour a day program.
Yeah.
It's got my stamina. I got opportunities for leadership. You just get a crash course on all of the different elements of how a school works just due to that program. And so I
Right.
owe Epiphany a lot
Yeah.
in terms of relationships and also just the experience. So that's how I
Right.
made way. I went to University of Dayton. And like I said, through my fraternity is when I got formal experience. But, some of the roots of education started for me in Detroit through doing youth work.
No doubt.
At my church and with my
So
family.
so you started to go then. I'm gonna ask you this. It's crazy, like for us when we look on television, if we look at social media, if we look at popular culture, I think that a lot of times you do not see brothers, and when I say brothers, I mean black men. You do not often see us associated with education. You don't see us. You see us associated with a whole lot of things, but education is normally not one of them. And you reference your grandmother, and I'm wondering, like, tell me about your journey, toward a career in education, and what sparked that interest. Your grandmother was an office manager for 50 years in Detroit, right? So there was that. Was that the inception? And then was there more that compounded on top of that as you continue to go? Like, what sparked that interest for you to get into education in the first place?
I think it was just a full circle journey. Um, influence from my family. My mother and father, both of them, are high school graduates. And, it's not a knock, hard workers, amazing people, but they was just, they was very just keen on, we are doing all the type of work that we do so that you can get an education and we want you to be the first.
No doubt.
And so, I took that seriously. I went to a great high school. If you know anything about Detroit, like Cass Tech people, that's my high school.
Okay.
We always say we the #1 city school, second to none. And so I got a love for education in high school. And even in college, I started off as an engineering major.
Yeah.
But in meeting, different professors and things, many people was just based on some of the things I was doing in the community. They were saying it would be a good idea, or you should probably look into education. You a leader, you have that background. It's something you should pursue. And the opportunity came up for an internship, and I jumped at the chance and aligned with some of the things I already had going, and it just worked.
Yeah, no, that's that again. That brings me back. That brings me back to us at Epiphany and us playing ball all the time.
It starts from there, man. Relationships through sports, man.
Relationships through sports. It was a brotherhood, and y'all had a brotherhood too, because you was you, but then it was other brothers that was there too at the same time. And y'all was kind of going through the journey, and I love that. You now are the executive director of the Helen Y. Davis Leadership Academy. I know at one point you were the principal, and we're going to get into some things. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about first is I tell me about your decision for principal, Dr. Tia Lights. And I want to talk about her because she's all over the community, right? Like, even if you don't know her directly, like, who she is. I seen most recently Jalen Brown, I think it was maybe a month or 2 months ago, that he was at your school and they had opened a truck up and I don't know what they was doing. Tell me about that, and tell me about your principal and why it was important for you to put her at the helm of leading the school.
So, one of our things, because of the demographics that we have on our staff, in Boston, it's very rare to have a school that's over 90% staff of color. Our board is 100%, of color.
Are you serious?
So, yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound real for what you think is representative of this area. And so our thing was we always had this tagline and we had never jumped on it. but we always said like we are like the HBCU of Boston middle schools. It was like a thing because of our makeup, and it had been that way at the school long before I came. So it was, essentially over a decade of having this type of model. And so the best way that I felt in terms of like rebranding and marketing, because so much of a charter school is a business, is to like honor the roots of what was already there, which it was more of like a Pan-African school.
Right.
But a good HBCU teaches you about your roots and puts you in a situation where you feel affirmed culturally because of the makeup of the school.
Right.
And so we had all those things, and my job was to run with it. And so when I got Dr. Lights' resume, I saw she's from the city of Boston. She's literally from this neighborhood.
That's right.
She's a community leader. And then also she went to a HBCU, and she's like a third generation HBCU alum. And so I felt like if I'm going to be honest about the culture and be representative of what it really is, I need to recruit folks that are in education that come from those communities, because you want to have it authentic. And so that's what I feel like she represents. And it's rare sometimes in charters because they are more national organizations,
Right.
to have like Boston, like a grassroots bred staff. And so that's what Dr. Lights is representative of.
Right. Right. Two things come to mind for us. One is, I'm sorry, like, to think that the board is all black, and whoever was the brain trust around being intentional around that is so critical, bro. I'm at a charter school right now. In full transparency, I love my executive director, Kate Scott. Good peoples. They're absolutely working through diversifying the board and diversifying leadership, and we're making a lot of progress, and that's awesome. But it's exciting to hear, like, that there's a board that's representative of the students that you serve. That there is a staff that's representative of the students that you serve, and it's so powerful, bro. Because like I said earlier, like I feel like a lot of times what's being portrayed to our kids in our community is that this is what black is like, and it's a very limited, narrow way of interpreting and thinking about what black folks can accomplish, both men and women. And so to go to school every day, and my executive director is a black man. My principal is a black woman who's a doctor who has lineage at HBCUs. The board are like, and the kids may not get how important it is right now, but they will come to a point in their life where they'll look back and be like, yo, being surrounded by black leadership was normal for me. And as a Boston native as well, bro, it excites me. It really fills me with a lot of hope, because for me that grew up here, a lot of times the only leadership we knew was white leadership on a political basis, in schools, community, city councilors. And so this recent wave that we've had politically, with sisters are assuming roles and assuming positions, we got brothers assuming roles and positions, exciting. But to hear about the demographic and the dynamic that's going on at the school is absolutely tremendous. The other thing I wanted to highlight too that I thought was so important about what you said is that for you, it was also important to find somebody local. One of the things that I find too about Boston that's really interesting for us is like people who are transplants to here seem to do very well. I know brothers and sisters from Atlanta, from here, from there, and they will come here and do well. And I find that Boston, we don't always do a good job supporting our homegrown talent. It's almost like Jesus said it like this. He was like, yo, a prophet is without honor in his own hometown. And sometimes I feel like if you're from here, raised here, educated here, and have done well here, when it's time to be able to have an opportunity at a particular position, that we could be often passed over. And I don't know if that's about people being too familiar, but I love the fact that I love the black leadership. I love a leadership that's representative of the students. And I love the fact that the principal is somebody local to the neighborhood who literally actually grew up there. I just think that was so wise, so smart, and it's powerful. So that's a beautiful thing. I want to let me ask you this question for us, right? Because you're the executive director. So I think my question is, I got like a 3-part question.
Mhm.
First, I'm wondering for you, like, what is the difference between you being a principal and you being the ED? Like, what do you find is the difference for you? And then the second and third part is, what are you most proud of and what's most challenging? But before we get to that, like, you were the principal, you are
Yeah.
the executive director now. Like, what's the distinction between those two?
So the principal is more academic focused and more centered around day-to-day operations and working directly with teachers.
Okay,
The ED is more overall structures and support systems for all stakeholders.
got it.
So
So
I'm
when you
checking
say all
on
stakeholders, you talking about teachers, staff,
teachers, students,
families, students.
board, families. And so I have to make sure that, like, my job is, are we doing what we say we are doing every day?
Mm,
Are we who we say we are? And like, how can we prove it?
I
And,
love it. I
you know,
love it. So so
more
so
of a more of a financial piece. And, it's more supporting the livelihoods of everyone in the community.
no doubt. Nah, your job is a big job. When you said, yo, I got to take care of all stakeholders involved, anybody who knows that language knows that is a big job. It's a critical job,
Absolutely.
and the distinction makes sense to me. That the principal is literally trying to make sure, like, yo, that the execution around academics is taking place. Period.
Absolutely.
Right. Like, that is and then you have to literally take care of the organization as a whole. No, that makes sense. So with that being said, let me ask you this question: what are you most proud of as ED? What when you think of, like, yo, I'm most proud of, like, what comes to mind, and then what's most challenging in your role?
I think I'm most proud of the track that I took to be ED,
Tell me about that.
because I feel like it's community based, and I grew up at DLA. So I started as a young teacher. I coached basketball. Like, I really came up with students and families. I've had some time as like a parent liaison. I've been a dean of students. So I've been in many roles, and I feel like as ED, I appreciate what everybody does because I've had so many different roles at DLA and also at my other placement. And so I just feel like it helps me connect more, and I'm more of like a person that usually when you think ED, you think it's somebody that's like on the computer or somebody you don't see or only
Right.
business. But I feel like I can do the business side of it and also still have a deep connection with my people. You know what I mean? And
I
so
love it.
that's what I'm most proud of, is just being visible, and being a support to so many different people in my community.
Now, what you just said, for us, I promise you, I'm gonna chop that up. I'm gonna clip that up. We're gonna put that clip out. That clip right there, like, no, you know why I love that, bro? Because, um, like, you can tell in your answer that visibility and being accessible is a value for you.
Absolutely.
And I was having a conversation with somebody earlier, and I said, sometimes people feel like leadership is about having position of authority and being able to tell people what to do. But real for me, real leadership is about, how do I make sure that my folks are successful? How do I remove barriers out of your way? How do I make myself accessible? How do I serve you to help you be as successful as you can be? And so that visibility is about access. And we have so much conversation, bro, around opportunity and access, and how those two doors, a lot of times, for the young people that we serve and that we love, too often they get no attempts, and if they do get an attempt, oftentimes it's one or two. But we learn in life that we need many opportunities and many access points, sometimes just to figure out, like, who am I and what am I called to do here? Like, why am I on this earth? What is the light that I'm supposed to shine? So I love that. Did you tell me about what's the most challenging part?
The most challenging, and it also goes into what I love about being at this institution. It's a lot of barriers for young Black teachers.
Talk
So,
about that, bro. Ooh, I want to hear this for us. Tell me
so,
about that.
so a couple of things. One is access, to have an entry point into a school. So it could be financial, it could be experience, it could be openings, it could be a solid career pathways program where how do I get licensure? Is this explained?
Mm,
There's cost involved with getting your license. Does the school take care of this? If I want to pass the test, am I getting the training? It's many different things. If I want to pursue getting my master's, so it's all of these different things that a lot of times young Black folks want to be involved in education. Is so many barriers, and then so much work that you have to do. And so, like, how do we find the balance? How do we give access? To your point,
right.
what supports are we putting in place for you to grow? And is there a chance for mobility? Because what
Mm,
oftentimes in a full school is like Black folks end up in entry level positions. And then how are you given a chance to get out of them? And are you
right.
given the right guidance? And
Right.
do you have a chance to make mistakes? And the last thing I'll say about being a young Black person in education that's so important, personally, you may get tied on to taking on extra work because you've walked the same path as your students. So you may try to take on extra work and it may be a challenge, or depending on your leader, you may be put in positions where you may have to take on a discipline role, or you may have to take on things that are outside of your job, which could be a tension point for you and lead to burnout or fatigue or maybe just disenfranchisement in
Right.
general.
Right.
So it's a lot of things that come into play that maybe, depending on the environment that you start in, some of those questions may not get answered. And so I love bringing in my young folks, but also am I equipped to make sure they're able to take next steps
Mm.
and succeed?
Yo, this is powerful, bro. This is powerful stuff. I'm not gonna lie to you. Listening to you talk, let me ask you this first, right? And I'm sure that Dr. Lights is also probably very much involved in this. But when you see resumes come across your desk, math teacher, English teacher, entry level, whatever, um, what what are you looking for? Like, what are the things that stand out to you when you're like, okay, you know what? Even if they don't have every credential that we might typically be looking for, there's something that I see here that we can work with. Like, what are those things sometimes? Like, what are you looking for? Like, if somebody's like, I want to be a teacher, like, what are you looking for in a resume, and then what are you looking for in that interview?
Oh, okay. So some of these questions I think resonate with me. So I want to get into educational background.
No doubt.
What can you put your stamp on that from a youth that may have wanted you to be, in the position that you're in now? Was it a teacher? Was it family? If you see some family background, then there's some things that maybe traditionally that you may not learn in an educator prep program that maybe you learn from family or from, a different institution, or maybe you had
Mm,
experience at a camp.
mm,
It's certain things that I try to look for that at least can be the building blocks to jump on. Um, I ask, so I have like 2 rounds of questioning that I do for interviews. And the first one is all culture based, that's just only for our setting. So it's like just particular things that I'm looking for that, how would you fit at DLA? So, and there's options to the question. So one of them may be, I'm not going to give them all, but I'll give
yep, yep.
one good one. I may ask, if you had to choose an indicator of student success, would it be
Mm,
family background? Would it be school culture? Would it be your routines as a teacher? I ask things like that, and I'm looking for certain things. I'm looking to see how you rank certain things. All of those things are important to put together, a rubric that would say you are strong in culturally proficient education. So it's like a fancy way of saying, do I see Black love? Do I
no
see
doubt.
high expectations? Right? Do I see somebody that sees themselves in the students? Do you understand that when you work with Black students, you inevitably will do more than what it says on your job description? Can you handle it?
I like that.
Stamina. How many hours can you work? And like, is that okay? You know what I mean? So it's a grind. DLA, and I just want to point this out, we have one of the highest percentages of high need students in the entire state.
Wow.
So it's just different type of work. And so I'm very clear about this in the interview.
Let
So
me ask,
if I don't scare you away, I may say,
no doubt.
no.
So much of what you said is so powerful. I'm so thankful to be doing this with you and to have this and to be in the clips that'll come out of this, like these questions that we're asking that we could just put out. I'm so excited. One thing that you said that I think is so powerful, bro, and I think that it levels the playing field when we talk about who's qualified and who's not qualified to do certain things. And right now we're talking about education, and you talked about experiential knowledge, right? And you said when I'm trying to assess, right, like what people have, where they are, it's not just about the educational path, right? And that's important, right? Like that training, that educational training is important. But I'm also looking for areas in their life where some of what we're looking for may have been attained, or at least the beginning of it was attained in some of these other places, in your family, in this particular program you were part of, at this thing, at that thing.
Yes.
And I love that because it's validated, right? I think a lot of times in the world that we live in, we're looking at our education, we're looking at our resume, and we're saying, do I stack up? And oftentimes what's left off that resume is experiential knowledge because we feel like it's not relevant. And what I love about, one thing, it's so funny for us, it's like a lot of times when I've applied to do different things, I always, in my cover letter, I always put at the bottom of it, I relish the opportunity, to be able to interview, because it's one thing to read my resume, then it's another thing for us to have a conversation and for you to figure out, oh, you come from here, you lived here, you experienced this, right? Like my resume is going to capture this much, but then a conversation is going to allow you to capture more because you get to ask questions about my journey and my context and my story. And so the fact that that's a value for you is powerful. Yo, and Kate, if you watching this, I don't know, this homie's a bad boy right here. I don't know. I might jump ship. I'm playing Kate. But I love that you do that. I love the fact that you're checking to see, culturally, are we a good fit? So one thing I'm realizing now, I'm new to the school thing for us, right? But I did work with young people in a community context for so long. And one of the things I'm seeing in the school is like, it's cool if you have your master's in education or whatever the case is. But culturally, like if you can't connect culturally, it makes the academic piece that much more difficult. Absolutely. And I see it all the time. So hearing you highlight these things, and then I want to ask you this question for us, because when you say this, I don't know if everybody's going to know what you need. When you say, yo, we are serving young people who have some of the highest percentage of need in the state, what do you mean when you talk about high need? Because it can be abstract to people who don't really know what we're talking about when we use that terminology.
So low income, free and reduced lunch, English language learners, students with disabilities. So that's a few of the things that will go into that designation for high needs. And most city schools have a similar demographic.
Yes.
City schools have a demographic, in that way. And you brought up something important in terms of like the context around having the technical ability. So you have your master's versus the culture. And so we are a culture first institution. And it goes back to some of the pitfalls. It's a waiver process that you don't have to have your license in your first year. And so we explain this right away. If we see some talent, this is something that we identify. And then we have an induction and mentorship program.
That's right.
Where we can work them through the processes of what they need to do.
That's right.
This is something that supports, young Black people wanting to get into the field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's something to touch on. And in terms of teaching and the life experience, your teaching decisions, your moves in the classroom, it comes from who you are as a person. One part of it is what you've learned and how to teach, but the decisions in your classroom, your environment as a whole, that's strictly based on who you are and what you believe.
Right.
And so that has to align if you're going to fit in any community.
Right. And it makes sense too for us, because when you're talking about the percentage of high need young people that we're working with, right? Neighborhood House is dealing with similar demographic. Codman's dealing with a
Everybody.
demographic. Brooke, all of us, right?
Yeah.
When you talk about that level of need, bro, that culture fit is so key. You know, one of the things I realized, you know, early on in my career, I was they call it absenteeism now, but I was a truant officer and I was working with the Lila G. And I realized, I remember one day we were running we were doing, you know, truancy, trying to track kids down during the day, but after school we were running an after school program trying to help kids with homework. And I remember one of the young men coming to the program. I seen him every day. And this particular day, I started asking him about his family. And he was like, "Oh yeah, I saw my dad this morning." I'm like, "Oh yeah, tell me about your dad." And he's like, "Yeah, he was drunk. He was drunk. He was sitting on the curb. I stepped over him on my way to school." And I remember that day, bro. It was it hit me, and I realized, and I've been advocating for it since, is that I'm like, yo, our kids need to be able to check in, like when the day starts at school, like, because I just thought about, imagine that young man, first period is algebra, and he don't get no kind of just human check-in before he got to go to algebra. And I was just like, and I just realized more and more as the journey went on for me, how much that culture piece is critical. And when you're disconnected from that, when you don't understand what a lot of our young people are facing, what they're dealing with, and you think that they should show up at school always ready to learn, and you don't realize that sometimes they come into school for us to escape the crib. They come into school to escape the block. They come into school. They didn't come to school to learn. They came to school to get a meal because they know at lunchtime they can eat. Like, that is real. And that socio-emotional, holistic way of trying to love young people is so critical. So you don't even understand how elated I am about having this conversation and about being able to lift these things up, because this is the real deal, Holyfield. And what we often do, especially in Boston, that's a super academic town, is we lay so much weight on your academic prowess that we sometimes don't care if you're a good cultural fit. But what I keep seeing over and over again, bro, from institution to institution, is when the cultural fit is off, yo, it don't even matter what's up here, because we can't even capitalize off this because people aren't feeling you. Students aren't feeling you. And so I'm going to come off my soapbox, but me and you 100% on that. Let me go here because I feel like this is relevant. There's always, and before I was, you know, before I was involved in school so directly as I am now, there's always dialogue about there not being enough men of color in education. Always. As an ED, I'm wondering what your assessment on that is. Is that myth or is that true? And how do we recruit more men of color to engage education as a career path? So the first question is that true for us? Is it true that we don't have enough? Like, because you've been in the game for a minute now. Tell me about that.
I mean, brothers are hard to come by in this field. I mean, that's just a thing. And I think it starts with, because we got to go back to life experience. When you look at the rates of brothers that graduate, brothers that have a sense of belonging at an early age is lower. If you look at any demographics, when you associate education with Black men, it's a disconnect. It's a funny story, man. I remember meeting a student maybe like 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I'm setting up a meeting, a transition meeting. It was a new student. And she said, "Hey, man, how you doing? You know, nice to meet you, man. I'm looking to meet the principal." I'm like, "Yeah, that's why I'm standing right here."
Right.
And the response was, "Well, you don't look like no principal."
For sure.
You know what I mean? And this is a young Black woman. And so it's always a thing where, like, naturally we're not associated with this, right? Think about even just small things like vocabulary acquisition. Most young people will say when you start learning words that, may not be, things that we can equate to our regular conversation, folks will say you sound white.
For sure.
So, it's things there. And then you look at suspension rates. If you look at any policy in education that are disciplinary, Black men or Black boys are affected the most. So it starts with like how you learn and the messaging that's put out to Black folks, Black, boys in particular as young people.
Right.
I think that's where the disconnect starts. And so in a strong culture, you are able to have conversations about how are Black boys faring in your community.
Right.
If you can't have those, you won't have Black men in your community.
No, that's for sure. One thing that you just said for us that sticks out to me is like, for a lot of us, school was traumatizing. You know,
Absolutely.
school was a place where we was always in trouble. I remember when I went to school, I started off going BPS. Then my parents, right, in an effort to try to give me the best education, sent me to Metco. So I'm in Wellesley from fourth grade to ninth grade. Shout out to Metco, super appreciative of that. Um, but my experience out there, part of what it did is that being the few Black kids that was going to an all white school is like, yo, that criminalizing you all the time began. I remember the assistant principal at the time, always around the corner watching us to see what we were doing. And it's hard not to internalize that something is wrong with you. So even
Right.
when you bring it out of that context and you bring it into a context of a city school, yo, from city schools to suburban schools, when you look at those numbers around Black boys and how much they're being sent to the classroom and being so the other thing I'm thinking as we're talking to, like, yo, like what is the struggle is, yo, just the trauma of what it was to be in school and to constantly feel like either you're not smart enough, you're not good enough, you're in trouble all the time. And I felt that way, and I wasn't a bad kid, you know, but I constantly felt like, damn, like a lot of my engagement is about what I'm not doing, you know, or how I'm in trouble or whatever. And so I think trauma, I think shame. But again, I think what's so powerful about this conversation, you know what I'm saying? I think what's powerful about this conversation for us, and you being a brother that's from Detroit, an urbanite, and then a brother who transplanted to this city that has been a part of the community in the city. You didn't transplant to the city and become an ED. You came to the city and literally, bro, went through the steps, went through the journey. You are a part of this community now. As much as you're a part of Detroit, you're a part of us. And so for you to be on here and for folks to see you, and this is why I had to interview you, bro, because like I said to you in the beginning, the visibility, you was like, yo, Rick, I got to be visible as an ED. And we need you visible as a community leader too. And it's important for us talking heads and different people who's having things and creating spaces to bring Black leaders in, that we diversify the groups of people that we're bringing in and talking to, and that we be very intentional to make sure that us being able to uplift. And shout out to my man Merkel, who's in Cambridge, who I believe is also an ED. Our Black executive directors and principals who are leading is critical, bro, because our kids need to see it. They need to see, oh, this is something attainable. This is something I can do and should pursue. You know what I'm saying? So again, off my soapbox, but that really that does it. So okay, let me go to this next one. Let me go to this next question right here. So at Neighborhood House, shout out to my sister Tammy Faye, who's doing an incredible job as our director of college and career profession. I guess my question is, so at DLA, it's just a middle school for us?
It's just a middle school.
It's just a middle school. So I don't know how much y'all get into the career path thing, but let me ask you this. Do y'all do any introduction into, hey, when you finish high school, you have this path, obviously, of post-secondary education and going to college, but then you also have what's become more popular, talking about trade and talking about career pathway. Do y'all start those conversations with the eighth graders? Do they start to get introduced to that or think about that at all? Or is that something that is down the line, you a lot of high school to deal with that?
So we offer some great programming as a standalone middle school because we believe it's practice for the college application process. So we have a thorough high school placement process.
Right.
So I do want to note this, something that's unique about our structure. Our clinical social worker, we treat and is an administrator at our school.
Wow.
And so that's extremely important. So all of our decisions start with the belonging. And if we want to make support adjustments, it starts with what we can do in the home. Also, she's in charge of our after school program. So we offer nursing, we offer drama, we offer cosmetology, we offer, we have a dance program. We partner with Boston Ballet this summer. They offer different type of options. We have a step team. We have culinary arts. So we start the job placement work early, and we also offer each year, and this is open to our entire community, a HBCU tour. So we go to Howard, we go to Hampton, we go to what's the school in Baltimore? I should know the name of it.
I should know too, and I don't know.
Every time it's a HBCU in Baltimore. Just this year we're doing the AUC. So we're doing Spelman, Morehouse. We're doing the Civil Rights Tour. So we have a leadership development program. We call it Spell House, and it's broken down by gender.
Wow.
And so we have HBCU panels. We have career panels. We bring in guest speakers. We just have many different access points for students to engage in college and careers. And a few years ago, we actually piloted a college and career readiness course.
Wow.
We had, like simulations, just things that Black people may have to deal with in college. Yeah. Your parent gave you $400. The books cost X amount on this day. You got to get groceries. So we try to put students in situations where they have to make adult decisions.
Yeah.
We have all different type of leadership opportunities, and we have an emphasis on public speaking. So all of our students are required to run our rituals. All students have to present in front of the whole school. Our students actually do a podcast. We have a journalism component of our art program.
Wow.
It's called 23rd and Leonard. So that's like an ode to 106 in Park. And so all of our students do interviews of each other and in the community. And so it's high engagement, it's leadership development, and it's a chance for you, because the exposure is the most important part.
Right.
You look at in white communities, and there's no shade, how many students already have parents that went to certain schools that they can look into.
Right.
How many young people have a parent that has a company or a career path that's guaranteed. Right. And so those things start for other races at a very early age. And so our job is the exposure. We feel like we can't wait.
Yeah.
Every one of our cohorts are named after HBCUs. You know what I mean? So all of those things are important.
Forrest, I love, man. It's so crazy. This is reminding me of the way that y'all was loving those kids over at Epiphany, man. Those kids could literally be up there all day, bro. They could go to school, then it was after school, then they could hoop. I mean, I was coming in to hoop after work. I'm getting at what we were starting hoop 5-6 days, still there. It was literally, it wasn't just school; it was community.
Exactly.
And two things that you said, bro, that are so powerful is, one, you said that your clinician is an administrator. So let me just, people who aren't in the school world, she's in leadership. She's considered one of the leaders of the school. That we talk about admin. She's one of the leaders of the school. She's not, your clinician is not in a silo or a one-off, or is only brought in when you're dealing with emergencies. You said this for us is powerful. You said when we think about belonging, right? Diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging, that the belonging is literally streamlined through that role. Absolutely. And that when decisions are being made, that person is consulted on how is this going to land? How does this feel? How does this work? That is so friggin' powerful.
And it reminds me, because I want to touch on the humanity of it, something that jumped out to me at her interview was the placement that she had. She already had worked at some of the toughest schools, some of the toughest high schools. And then her son, she led a HBCU tour at the Burke. And then her son actually attends Morehouse. Wow. So once again, the cultural piece, you know what I'm saying? Everything goes back to it. And then the second round of the interviews, when we get into the X's and O's, of like, this is the vision and the day-to-day logistics.
Yeah.
Everybody has a connection in our building, whether they know it or not. You know what I mean? And so somebody else that's local, and that's special.
Yeah.
It's built around our community.
Yeah. What's powerful too is the relevant programs, right? You talk about step-in and journalism and podcasting and all the different things. Um, Again, we're talking about access points, right? And for our young people, it's crazy because I was the director of Youth Options Unlimited in Boston for a while, and we were working with proven risk young people. A lot of them have been through a lot, and this role was about like allowing kids to be exposed to different workforce environments and being able to build soft skills and prepping them for life and doing mock interviews and giving you an opportunity and build relationships with stakeholders and all that stuff. Like, but trying to create relevant access points that make sense based on who you are and where you're trying to go. And so when I think about the stepping, I think about I love what you're doing over there, bro. Um, I love what your staff is doing. I love how intentional it is. And none of us, and listen, and none of our schools are perfect, right? So like, look, we all have our issues, but when I'm talking to you, you know what I hear? Intentionality. You know what I hear? I hear leadership that says, even though it may not be perfect, we know what we want to implement. We know what we want to do. We know the framework we want to operate out of and function within. And it's just powerful. It's just dope to have leadership like that. And it's dope to hear it. Like it's dope to hear it. So that is that's powerful. I'm gonna switch gears. I got two more questions for you. I'm gonna get you out of here at 60 minutes. I want to ask you this because we were talking about this a little bit before we went live, and I was having a conversation with somebody earlier, and I said, oftentimes you can always tell people, bro, who never been in leadership because they think that leadership is about positional authority, and they think leadership is about being able to tell people what to do. And I have found that successful leaders and the leaders that I respect, are leaders who do a really good job at taking care of their people. They do a really good job at removing barriers. And when it hits the fan, they take responsibility. Now, whatever conversations they got to have behind closed doors with whoever else might be a part of the ball dropping, they're going to do that, right? But what they're not going to do for us is they're not going to get out front and throw their people under the bus. They're going to eat it and then deal with whatever got to be ironed out later. There's a two-piece here, like you, one as principal, and then as executive director have faced, and this is in addition to whatever else, right? That people will never know publicly that you deal with in the role that you're in. But as principal, you had students experience some real racism. It became a really big thing in 2019 at the Museum of Fine Arts in 2019. You had to navigate that as principal. And then in 2021, Terrence Clark, who was beloved by our community, who me and you, we're hoopers, who was a hooper like none other, was known by NBA players, had committed to go to Kentucky. His life was lost tragically. So as principal for one, as ED, as the other one's going on, and he was a student there at one point, how did you navigate that for us? Like, how was it for you personally? And then how did you help to lead the community through those two very, very difficult things?
I mean, that's heavy. It's heavy. Number one, just acknowledgement of the type of staff that I have and just the type of community that it is. And I wouldn't have gotten through any of that stuff. It's tough without the support and the folks that I literally have grown up with in my time at DLA. I'm over a decade there. I think maybe 12 years now. And the first part of the question with the MFA, I remember the outrage. I remember, folks being upset. I just remember the student teachers coming back and just that feeling of like powerlessness. And so it was a twofold thing. Like number one, because it ended up being national news, you have to have a communication plan. So, and something that was so important for me is I didn't want the school to be known as just, we're all victims.
That's right.
It was an unfortunate incident that happened.
Right.
But I'm not somebody that I want to be seen in the media in any way, sort of broadcasting this thing. Like my most important thing was just triage for our families.
That's right.
And taking care of them and trying to provide supports in the best way I could. And throughout that process, it's funny that you mentioned the obstacles because, everybody that you speak to would tell you, this is what you should do.
That's right.
Here's how you should move forward.
That's right.
Everybody has their own timeline and advice. And so for me, the most important thing for me was just looking internally and just trying to protect staff because it was to the point where, you know, uh, we had death threats go out to students and staff.
Really?
We would get
It got that bad for us?
hate mail about, we are promoting this idea of scamming and race baiting, and that's
Wow.
not who we are. We just proud people. I keep some of the hate mail with me every day, like just as motivation. We got threats online. We would have folks call in to the school in the morning. So I mean, it was like a tense situation
Wow.
because how it was, um, it may not be the most clear evidence that any of these things happen, and this is just a group of black people looking to take advantage or blowing things out of proportion. Obviously, the first thing that comes up, they were in a museum, so these black kids must have been breaking rules.
That's right.
None of that was found to be true.
That's right.
So, in supporting our students, I took a lot of heat. I took a lot of heat, and I think the community supported me in our actions. Um, and it's just something that you have to live with and learn and grow from. But I took away from that the importance of communication, having one vision, and just staying positive because through everything that happened, we still have to function as a school every
That's
day,
right.
and the program have to go on as normal. The
That's
program
right.
have to go on as normal, and for those students that were affected, the important thing is that I always told them what racism was.
That's
It's
right.
a part of leadership, and it's a part of mobility, and I still stand by that to this day. As
Right.
a black person, as you move up, this is what you're going to deal with.
That's right.
Less and less of us, and you're going to get some resistance. So how do you respond? How do you still succeed? And sharing some of these things with my community, for a time I was villainized, and maybe some decisions that took place during that time, I was questioned. But I still got to be positive every day and show up for the community.
That's right. And you still here for us. Like
Still
you're
here,
still
still
here
going.
right now, leading this school right now. And it brings me to this second piece here because this young brother was beloved, bro. Yo, the community loved Terrence Clark. Like, even if you didn't know him personally, yo, you knew someone who knew him. He was literally beloved. In fact, man, like, as a person who grew up in the city, played ball in the city, I really can't remember, man, another young kid, young man who had stardom written all over him in terms of athletics, but was loved. Like,
Yes.
he was loved. Like, he wasn't just loved because he could hoop. He was loved because of who he was. And I know that at the time of his passing, it wasn't like he had left, DLA, and then like he had been gone for some time because he was a middle school student there. But in the flyer that I have of our event, I think there's a poster up in your school with him. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What when he when that tragedy happened, and it's crazy because tragedy happens in a moment and it continues, right? So it ain't like, oh, we're over it.
Right.
What responsibility did you feel as the ED of a school that he had attended, of a kid that's loved in the community? Like what was that like for you? How did you and how are you processing through that?
Oh, well, again, I think it goes back to the community. Every student that had ever, experienced some time with him from that place, I mean, they, on their own, decided they wanted to have something for him at the school, have a vigil. I mean, the whole block was full. I mean, it was hundreds of kids from his era that came.
Mm,
They organized it, and I
wow,
actually was out of town, and I got back here as fast as I could to be here
wow,
with them. Um, I remember the first time meeting him, maybe at 11 years old, and him telling me, maybe 11, 12 years old, at, at that early age, he was saying he was going to either Duke or Kentucky. I remember that. Definitely, that was one of his
Unbelievable.
dreams. Because I always had time to get into the career path for my students. That's how we intro to the day. I would have different questions, and he was proud. I mean, he was somebody that just brought joy to everybody that he met, and he got excited about the little things. And like he exemplifies what it means to be a DLA scholar. And we can move the accolades aside. As a teacher nerd, what I loved about him was watching him interview. It was like everything that we saw, and it goes back to that public speaking element. He's so comfortable in front of a camera,
Oh my goodness.
such a
Ooh.
visionary. Just you could feel his personality and big smile. And in those days, we had mandatory ties, so we would practice getting this tie right,
Right.
have it down, pass your belt and everything. And so he would get hype about that. He just was competitive about everything. And like literally, maybe a month or two before he passed away, he came to DLA and talked to our current players. It's something that I always reminded them brothers. I never had to put him in detention. We never had to talk about, do we need to get him on the right path? He came in from day one saying that's what he wanted to do, and he knew the steps he had to take. And nobody can take credit for somebody like that. Just a
That's
true
right.
talent, a smart brother. I can't say. I can say we honed some skills, but he came with so many gifts. And we have a lineage of other brothers that, are talented at that level. Bruce Brown, he
That's
plays
right.
with the Nuggets.
That's
And
right.
then you have AJ Reeves, who just, I think he's with the G League with the Celtics. All
Right.
these DLA kids, in
Wow.
different eras around that time. And shout out to Chris Coblin. He was the ED before me. He used to hoop with us.
Wow.
And he built a program over there. And the expectation that he had for excellence, just academically and athletically, he set the groundwork for me to be a successful ED. And he coached that brother. I mean, he had study hall with those guys every night. He didn't just coach them. He made sure
Wow.
that homework was done every day. And it's the little things that I feel like it goes back to that stamina. As an ED, as a leader, you have to be willing to put in more work than everybody that you're giving directions to. Because
That's
they
right.
want to see. They want to see what you have, man. They want to see what you're about. And so you can't just lead them without leading by example. And that's what I try to do. And you got to lead with service. And so you've been hammering that point home the whole time. I'm only as good as the talent I have. And can I uplift my folks? Um, and, students like Terrence, they just, and there's just so many other talented students. Um, having kids like that have been in my life and the families like that have shown support to me, I didn't have a choice but to grow. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? DLA, the type of space that it is, allows for sometimes the underdog or for somebody that may not be considered for certain things to have a place. You know what I mean? And it's authentic. It's authentic. I never felt that any of the extra work or things that I was doing, it never felt extra.
Yeah.
It's like just
Yeah.
what you got to do for your people, and like so many brothers like him. I mean, the young men in his era, they would come on Saturday to do work. It
Wow.
was really like that. They'd be there to open the doors sometime before I got there. You know what I mean? And so
That's
the
powerful, bro.
culture, man, the culture there is something that I just try to upkeep, but it's nothing I can really take credit for. It was
Right.
already, it was already going. I'm lucky enough to be a part of a structure like this, and the culture, um, which sometimes is hard to tap into, but it automatically leads to academic growth. Do you respect your families? Do you respect the culture and the opinion of your young folks? Are you inclusive? And when you have all of these black people as staff members, right? We're not going to have a deficit model. We're not going to think less of our baby.
That's right.
We're
That's right.
not going to be afraid to inform our families. Sometimes we're not going to be afraid to challenge folks when we have to. We go
That's right.
through the same things. And so if that relatability is not there, you will struggle academically.
Yes.
And so, we put a lot of time into the structure, into the programming, and just for students to feel good about who they are, even some of our policies.
Right.
At certain schools in Massachusetts, if you wear your hair in an afro, it's a punishment.
It's a punishment.
If
I
you
know.
have a hijab, it's a punishment. If you have some swag, if you got sneakers that maybe aren't a certain color, it's a punishment.
Right.
This is all what makes us who we are.
That's right. That's right.
It's important for Black culture. So
That's right.
just think about how much we've put into the fashion industry. So why can't our kids represent who they are?
Why we can't be fly, right?
Think about the era of like Trayvon Martin, right? I'm going to tell a kid they can't wear a hoodie. We have DLA hoodies they can wear every day.
Right.
It's little things like that. I want students to be in charge of policy. So they may send me a policy update. We want this added to the uniform. Or, we may feel we need this particular program. Our biggest program that we had, and you're not going to believe the after school program that had the most, just at the highest capacity, it was anime, bro. I've never heard of it. I would have never been like, if I'm thinking of an after school program,
right?
Anime. I mean, we have 30, 40 kids in there.
They don't play, man. They don't play around with that. It's serious.
No, they are serious about it. So I said, we have to have it. The need for it is so great. I don't know anything about it, but if y'all like it, I love it. You know what I mean? Let's put it in. And so it's things like that that like students feel empowered. They feel like leaders.
You said
you gotta
have it. You said so many. I got chills. You said so many powerful things there, and you ended with saying, this was an interest they had, and so we put some programming in place that was directly aligned with the need.
Yes.
It wasn't about we're gonna do this and then we're gonna make you adapt to what we. No. It was, there's interest here, right? So there's interest in need. So we're gonna put programming in place that aligns with and meets that need. It's powerful. I'm gonna, so much of what you just said in that answer, bro, answering these two questions, is so powerful. For everybody who's gonna watch this interview later, God bless you. You're welcome. I want to ask you this question, bro. My last question, and I'm not gonna do the last question I had. I'm gonna just ask you this question. And you said so much about this, but I want to encapsulate this for prospective teachers and for prospective families who, if I was a family, bro, and I had a 5th grader that was going to middle school next year, or if I had a 7th grader or I had a young person in middle school, I would want to send them to DLA. And so for prospective teachers, families, scholars, if there was one thing that you wanted them to know about DLA, that when you come to DLA, like this is what you're going to experience, what would that be? What would that thing be that makes y'all unique? And you said so much already that makes y'all unique amongst other schools, but what makes y'all unique? Why should a teacher want to come, or family, scholars want to come and be a part of DLA?
I mean, if I could sum it up, I would just say Black love, man. Black love is something that you don't associate with the educational landscape. And I could just say that wholeheartedly. We believe in students getting a chance to lead and being led by your own people, because it's a unique service opportunity that we have. So how sometime on social media you'll see something like, I wish I had someone to teach me about taxes, or I wish I had somebody to teach me about credit. We offer classes like that. We have financial literacy. We have real estate offerings. So like what we want to do is say, if your kid comes here, no matter what they're good at, it's going to be something here where they can be an expert and take something with them, whether they do the college or career path. And it's the exposure. You know what I mean? We have things for families as well. We have the parent leadership team. We have home ownership courses that families can take if they're in need. We send out a family survey where we're asking, You know, what are the different needs that you have at home that could activate, you know, not only the students' growth, but also just support you as a family. For the holidays, we got a great program that we do for the holidays where students can cash in. We call them bonus bucks. You get those for whether you are participating in class or just a strong citizen. You get the bonus bucks, and you can use these to buy gifts for your family for the holidays. So we want to show our kids that what you put into the community, you can get out of it, and you can support your family with the work you do educationally. And so it's not just something that we talk about. You got to give them something tangible, something that they
That's
can
right.
put their hands on and see and feel it. You know what I mean? So much of education is not grassroots and community orientated. It's just not. And so I feel that we're the only school that we can do what we do. You
Right.
know what I mean? I feel that way. And it's the last piece I'll say. Because we're culture based, the first critique is that we're not academically sound. But if you look at the data over the past 15, 20 years, I can only name a couple of schools that have done better than us on state testing. If you look at this past year, getting through COVID, we had the highest literacy growth rate on MCAS out of any charter school. If you look at some of our math scores, you look at eighth grade math, the highest student growth percentile out of any charter school. You know, and I can go down the list of statistics. We top the state average in every subgroup category. So our English language learners, our students with disabilities, black males, right? You name the subgroup, we outperform the state with the highest need population. And we take all transfers. We have open enrollment. And so the key for us in building the consistency is we need a full sixth grade. But in actuality, wherever we get a student, wherever you start, we can guarantee some of the highest growth in the state of Massachusetts. We can put our stamp on it. It's proven. We can look at the data. And it's not all about testing. I feel like our culture gets us to the point where we can test well. You know?
I gotta I gotta say this for us. First, I gotta just thank you, bro. Thank you for you're a busy man. You got a lot of responsibility, and you got a family. And so, for you just taking the time to be able to come and kick it with me and kick it with us, and just give us wisdom and so many gems, so much wisdom in this interview. I gotta say thank you. And also too, like you really, you know, I'm a COO at a charter school in Boston, and there are a lot of things that we're trying to put in place as we're thinking through equity and thinking through access and thinking through opportunity and thinking through culture. You know what I'm saying? Um, and one of the things that we're doing right now, we're working with this company Transcend, and they are helping us to kind of redesign some things. And we've identified these design principles. And in a conversation with these Transcend people, you know, about a week ago, they were saying, you know, the design principles, like these values, like when they're embedded, this is what creates the culture for your graduate aims to come into fruition, right? But the culture, like the ground got to be right to put that seed in the water. If you just throw some seed on some ground that ain't tilled and try to water the seed, it ain't never gonna grow. Like that ground got to be ready. It got to be ready for it. And so I'm so encouraged about what y'all are doing. Everybody who works at any schools should be encouraged because it's possible to do this culturally relevant work that has high expectations in terms of rigor, but then also has the pieces in place. It ain't high expectations without the pieces in place to get the kids there. It's the high expectations with the pieces in place that say, here's how you can get from here to here, right? Everybody's talking high expectations, but we don't necessarily got the triggers and the pieces and the sequence in place to make sure that you can get from A to Z. And so, bro, from me to you, I love you. Respect the work that you're doing. Your answer on, yo, what's the thing about DLA? And for that answer to be Black love, bro, yo, love you, salute you. Don't go off yet. Listen, y'all, we love y'all. Thank you for tuning in. Everybody who's going to see this later, this is a blessing. Bless y'all. We out.
I appreciate you, brother.
No doubt, bro.